This right here is a video by not I was gonna say something else. Meta Goblin. TBC Anniversary Class Picking Guide. Which class should you play? I usually enjoy his takes, by the way, on class picking guides because many other content creators, myself included sometimes, we/they make really long class picking guides. You have usually separate videos for each class, and then they combine the best parts of each separate video into one huge video covering every single class. So you end up with like 40-minute class picking guides, 1.5 hour class picking guides. I think I've seen a 3 hour one out there as well. And when I'm watching a video, I can sit down and watch it for like half an hour while I'm eating food or something, but I'm not gonna sit there for 3 hours and watch a class picking guide. That is just not happening, right? So what Meta Goblin usually does is he has a really shortened version of it, and this one is 11 minutes, so way more digestible, right? We're going to check it out, see what he has to say.
Alright guys, my name is Goblin, and today I'm going to be walking you through every single class option in the classic Burning Crusade to help you decide on what class to play. I'm going to keep this video nice and sharp to keep the video short and efficient, but if you want longer detailed videos on all the classes, you'll find a useful playlist in the description of this video. I'm going to structure this video very precisely by asking the 3 big questions anybody asks when choosing a class. Is it any good in PvE? Is it any good in PvP? And is it actually fun? Beginning with the Warlock, this is a top tier class for both raiding and PvP, and arguably the strongest class in the Burning Crusade in both aspects of the game. Their DPS in Shadowbolt spec is insane because Warlocks can spec down into the demonology tree to pick up the demonic sacrifice talent to benefit from an extra 15% shadow damage, which will also stack with their Shadow Priest shadow weaving talent for a total of 30% extra flat damage. Also stacks with Curse of Element and the Misery debuff that Shadow Priest provides too. Not to mention the improved Shadowbolt talent that increases your Shadowbolt damage by a further 20% on the next 4 Shadowbolt casts, which becomes extremely powerful when multiple Warlocks are applying this debuff. Essentially, Warlocks have a permanent 50% increased Shadowbolt damage from their talent alone. It's why they don't even need that much gear to do insane damage. In PvP, Warlocks can play the Siphon Life and Soul Link build, which makes them as tanky as a protection warrior, but still able to pack a punch.
Or simply go all the way down to Unstable Affliction and watch your damage over times absolutely melt. Like, your damage over times, by the way, even in the pre-patch right now, the damage you do is crazy. It is nuts. I don't understand how they can do so much damage. It's crazy. Like, as a rogue as well, if I get fully dotted by a Warlock, I'm probably dead over time. And especially if a Shadow Priest and a Warlock dots me, I'm dead. And sometimes even eating food doesn't offset that damage. It's crazy.
So they're incredibly strong in Arena, especially with their powerful utility. But is it any fun? So if you decide to play the Shadowbolt spec, the rotation is extremely simple. You just spam Shadowbolt for the whole expansion, which is obviously very boring. However, you do have the option to either play Fire Warlock or Affliction Warlock, which have more interesting rotations and playstyles. Affliction provides useful utility to a tank mainly, and Fire Warlock can actually deal more damage than a Shadow Warlock if there is a Fire Mage in a group instead of a Shadow Priest. By the way guys, if you're still trying to catch up for the TBC pre-patch, the best way by far to do that is to get a leveling add-on which just tells you exactly where to go in the exact right order to massively save time. I recently have been leveling with my friend who has absolutely zero experience with World of Warcraft, and we actually managed to get to like level 15 in 3.5 hours. It's ridiculously fast, grinding like 15k XP per hour. That low level is just ludicrous, and it's because of the guide. It will tell you where to die, okay, for certain skips, so you can skip massive walks. It tells you when to skip certain quests because you can complete that quest while doing another quest at the same time later. It tells you when to pre-prepare items to basically get instant quest turn-ins again later during the leveling journey. It saves you so much time because it gives you all of that knowledge that you don't know when you're jumping into World of Warcraft and playing the game. If you don't believe me, you can get up to level 20 totally for free by just getting the add-on off Curse Client. And if you do want to support the channel, be sure to click my link in the description to automatically get a really good discount on the Rested XP guide. Next we have a Hunter, another top tier S.
I also have a link to the guide, by the way, in this video over here, the pinned comment, but I was going to add here, I was leveling yesterday on my Shaman, and one really cool thing, I think this is an addition in TBC, because I've never seen it in my guide for Classic WoW. In the Dustwallow Marsh, we have a lot of new quests now, as Alliance. I think Horde does as well, but at least there's a bunch of new quests. Even in the Alliance City as well, there's a lot of new quests. And then we have the Mud Sprocket Town for even more quests as well. But my main point here is that there's one of the quests in Dustwallow that you are supposed to go and talk to Bulvar in Stormwind. If you pick up this quest, and you talk to Jaina, she teleports you to Stormwind, you then abandon the quest, you can use this teleport over and over again. So you basically, as any class, unlock a teleport from Dustwall Marsh or Theramore to Stormwind. Or not Stormwind. No, Stormwind. Bolvar. Yeah, Stormwind. So you can go from Theramore to Stormwind on demand. And Vested XP tells you this. They tell you to pick up the quest, teleport to Stormwind, abandon the quest. And that way you can do it over again. It is insane. And yeah, just like having a guide to follow makes leveling so much easier, because you never have to wonder about which quest do I do and when do I do it. Even if you just value your time, it's just a good way to make sure you never waste time, because the guide is optimized to do the quests in the right order. If you're just questing by yourself, you might pick up some quests, go to a location, hand them in, pick up a new quest in the same location that Rested XP would have told you to do in a different order, to only go to that location once. Instead, you might go there twice, 3 or 4 times, because you don't know what to pick up and when to go there, you know?
Class in raiding, but more of an average tier class in PvP. Because of a tier 3 dungeon set available to hunters, hunters can do ridiculous damage very early on in TBC because of their armor reduction set bonus that boosts their damage considerably. It will take a long time for you to replace this 4 set piece bonus, so you don't need to worry about getting raid loot as much as the other classes. Through the entirety of TBC, they will be topping the meters in Beast Mastery spec. In PvP, most hunters would go double healer and hunter to exploit the power of Viper Sting. It's more of a cheesy combo, to be honest, since hunters don't have the greatest maneuverability or defensive capabilities in the game, and obviously they can't do range damage in melee range or while moving until Mr. Pandaria. But is it any fun though? So unfortunately, hunters back in TBC days created the infamous one button macro that perfectly fits your entire rotation into a spammable button to provide the optimal DPS possible for a hunter. So depending on whether Blizzard actually hotfixed this macro, you'll just be spamming one button for the entire expansion. The only other option is to play Survival spec, which is more of a raid utility spec that does less DPS. Future Meta Goblin here, come to edit the video. Basically ignore everything about Warrior being low tier DPS, they are a top tier DPS. As a main tank, they are great for progression raiding because of their powerful cooldowns like Shield Wall and Last Stand.
I was gonna say, like, where is this 3-star as... Wait, is it 3-star or minus 3-star as a DPS? Because the PvE performance, they are really good. I was just gonna say, like, what is bro cooking?
Which the other tanks obviously don't have. However, they are not great for doing fast dungeon groups with AoE DPS because they won't be able to hold aggro against a Mage's Blizzard, for instance. They can DPS as a useful support class in Arm spec, and Fury spec will provide slightly more solo DPS. In PvP, however, it's not all doom and gloom because Arm spec is an incredibly powerful spec, particularly when you craft Storm Herald, which is a stun proc of 4 seconds with no diminishing returns of any other stuns. It also scales well with your DPS abilities because it's a 3.8 second speed weapon. Now, Rogue aren't horrendous, but you're not going to see 2 in a raid because they are at the bottom of the DPS tier. Raids probably won't bring more than 1 Rogue to a raid, as they are only there to balance the comp and provide some useful utility from time to time. In PvP, they are a gladiator earning class. They have great maneuverability, great defensive, great CC for pushing pressure and peeling, and overall an extremely fun class to play in both PvP and PvE. It's also great just being able to lockpick your way into locked dungeons. You can also gain access to the first boss room quicker in Shattered Halls by unlocking the door, not to mention all the solo dungeon runs you can do to open chests and earn some decent gold. When it comes to a Mage, just imagine a Warlock but 10% less good. They will top DPS meters in raids, they will push Gladiator Rake in Arena, but we're just a little bit behind Warlocks. They can play as every single spec since they are very balanced during the Burning Crusade. The Mage community argues a lot about...
How are they 10% worse than... Huh? 10% worse than Warlocks? In what way? Like, in what... Like, yeah, I don't know. I think Mage is on par or better than Warlocks, I don't know. It depends on the raid setup and how set up the raid is to actually like support the Arcane Mage to pump through Boomkins, Shadow Priests. You need to have innovates, right? And set up the pump as Arcane Mage. And for PvP, I mean RMP, Rogue Mage Priests. Need I say more?
Which spec is best in slot? Short answer to that question, it depends on what gear you have. But overall, I would say that you can easily play any spec you want and make it work. Frost is great because you can use Cold Snap and Icy Veins combo to double up on the cooldown on a single raid fight. Fire is good when you have lots of spell crit because of beefy Ignite procs, and Arcane is great because you get a lot of spell hit chance from your talents for your new Arcane Blast ability, which is boosted even more by the tier 5 set bonus. In PvP, the Frost Mage has arguably the biggest toolkit. They can perform strongly in every aspect of PvP gameplay, however they are one of the highest skill ceilings out of the other classes, so be prepared to pull up your pants. Although the raid rotations are very simple for the Mage, much like a Hunter or Warlock, they are definitely slightly more interesting because they have opportunities to cast other multiple abilities, for instance cooldown timing and Fire Blast while on the move. I like to think of a Mage as a Warlock that does 10% less.
I don't know why people still try to claim Fire is good in TBC. It's a dead spec. I mean, it's probably for the people that really don't want to play Arcane, right? I would say Fire is better than Frost in PvE. I don't think that's an overstatement. So yeah, anybody who doesn't want to play Arcane, for whatever reason, and it's just like, let them do their thing, right?
Damage, but makes up for it with portals and great capability to do AoE solo gold farming. The great thing about Paladin in TBC is that all of the specs suddenly have become viable. Protection Paladin, in my opinion, is the overall best tank in TBC because they are so good at holding threat in dungeon groups to allow DPS to use their AoE abilities. They can also use Exorcism to generate a lot of threat on undead and demon bosses. They also have no issues with crushing blows because of Holy Shield, unlike a warrior. Retribution is a powerful support spec, not a great DPS spec, but they do provide great AoE healing, AoE mana regeneration, and increased melee and spell crit debuff, and obviously they're useful buffs. Holy is a great healer with good
True, there's other hearing about how people talk about it in videos. Yeah, there's a bunch of video people right now who are only repeating their older guides from TBC the first time. Not saying Metagoblin does that all the time, but some people do, and they only just rehash the same info. In which case, in 2021, people said go Fire, because the general consensus back then was that you needed gear to play Arcane, and you needed certain set pieces as well to play Arcane, and Arcane was just better later in the game when we had post-nerf. Like pre-nerf raids, Fire that did better, I think, back in 2021, so people just rehash the same info and not look at it like from the updated point of view. A lot of people that make videos don't play the game. Once again, not aiming this at Metagoblin, just having a different conversation here at the same time as watching this. Some people that make videos don't play the game that much. They have editors on their team, and they talk. They get sent a script, or they make it themselves, and they talk. You know?
Mana efficiency once you get good gear with a big toolkit of powerful defensive cooldowns. Unfortunately in PvP they're not that great, and this goes for every single spec, simply because Resto Druid and Disc Priest are better than Holy, and Warrior and Rogue are much better than Retribution, so the comps that use those better specs will simply outmatch comps of a Paladin. Protection and Ret are very fun specs to play with multiple abilities, however Holy Paladins have a much more simple healing toolkit since they will be spamming one ability most of the time. Much like the Paladin, the enhancement and elemental specs suddenly become viable in TBC. Elemental can easily compete with Warlock and Mage on the DPS meters.
I will say, by the way, I've really been enjoying enhancement gameplay. I also feel like totem twisting doesn't sound too rough. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I think people are dreading or fearing totem twisting too much. You make sure you have Wind Fury up. Like the weapon imbue, right? So every 10 seconds you pop a totem twist.
Early on in the expansion, but unfortunately they begin to scale badly later on in the expansion due to their gear. They also provide very useful utility for other casters in the form of Totem of Wrath that increases the party spell crit and hit chance by 3% each. Enhancement is essentially like a rogue with more useful utility. They won't provide the best personal DPS in the game, however they will more than make up for it with their buffs, like Unleashed Rage that increases the party's attack power, and Bloodlust or Heroism that boosts the party's haste by 30% for 40 seconds, which can be used multiple times in a fight, and all Shamans in fact have access to that ability. Resto is easily the best AoE healer in the game, and also great for tank healing because their healing crits increase the tank's armors by 25%, and obviously they provide all of the useful totems every Shaman provides, like Wind Fury Totem and Mana Spring Totem. Resto Shaman is one of the most fun healers to play because you don't solely focus on healing but also buffing. Enhancement has a cool and interesting rotation.
Yeah, like Resto Shaman is like really fun to play as a healer, and it's also one of the biggest in-demand healers. If you're stacking any healer in your raid in TBC, it's gonna be a Resto Shaman. Like, you can have a lot of Resto Shamans, and it's not even, like, not negatively impacting your raid, but it's positively impacting it, actually, which is great. So if anything, you want to stack Resto Shamans. Not saying they are the best healer through throughput, so anybody who's listening to that, don't get me wrong, Holy Priests are amazing when it comes to actual healing, but Resto Shamans are just good at everything else, like utility, the totems they bring, the armor they bring to the healed tank as well, for example. It's just a lot of good extra benefits from having Resto Shamans, and especially in phase 1 when we get raids and a nerf, post-nerfed state as well, or nerfed state, post-nerf or nerfed state. Oh, I suck at English, man. Post-nerf or nerfed state, right? Yeah. So in that case, you might not need that Holy Priest healing output, because how much healing do you really need to do when the bosses just slap you? They don't hit you anymore, they just slap you in the face. That's the damage they're doing, right?
A totem twisting trick can be quite challenging. However, Elemental is the same story as the Mage. Fairly simple rotation, but at least you have the opportunity to use other spells from time to time. Overall, Shaman, extremely powerful support class and very highly desired. I'll begin by talking about the Shadow Priest. This is a class I've played a lot during TBC and the class I'll be in fact rolling in Classic TBC. Shadow Priests are probably the strongest yet rarer support classes in TBC. Their abilities such as Vampiric Touch is a dot that converts all of your shadow damage into mana regeneration for your party. The more shadow damage you do, the more mana you will give back. Also, Vampiric Embrace provides AoE healing, and you also have nasty debuffs like Shadow Vulnerability, like I mentioned before, increasing shadow damage by 15%, and Misery that increases all spell damage on the target by 5%. Hull is a very strong raid healing spec with powerful single target and AoE healing. Disc is more of a PvP healing spec because of how powerful pain suppression is. It's essentially like a mini shield wall that you can buff on your teammates. You also have Power Infusion to buff the cast speed of your Warlock or Mage. In fact, the utility kit is huge in every single spec for a Priest, although Shadow is more of a mid-tier spec when it comes to arenas, whereas Disc is a top-tier spec, particularly when you play in comps like RMP, an absolute gladiator pushing comp. I would say
Yeah, dude, RMP is insane, by the way. Priest is a really solid pick for TBC in general, I feel like, because Shadow Priest is really wanted in raids. You want to have at least one of them, sometimes even two of them as well. So Shadow Priest, really good choice, and then you can have a healer off spec, either for PvP, so you go Discipline, or for PvE, so you go Holy, right? It's just a good choice overall, man. And Shadow Priest as well is kind of fun to play in TBC, especially compared to Vanilla. I mean, doesn't really take much to beat Vanilla Shadow Priest, but hey.
Shadow Spec has the most interesting rotation out of any of the other specs in the game, since you can use multiple abilities. I'd also say that Holy is one of the more fun specs to play.
Wait, what did he just say? I need to like re-listen to that one.
Specs in the game, since you can use multiple.
Okay, we go back a little bit more. We go back here.
MP, an absolute gladiator pushing comp. I would say Shadow Spec has the most interesting rotation out of any of the other specs in the game, since you can use.
Shadow Priest has the most interesting rotation out of any other spec in the game. Okay, why? Okay, why?
Use multiple abilities. I'd also say that Holy is one of the more fun specs to play, since you can provide very useful single target healing, AoE healing, and clutch gameplay with abilities like Power Word Shield. So for a Druid, all of the specs are perfectly viable. Feral Bear spec is a great tanking spec with an extremely high health pool that can even soak crushing blows, also with great threat generation. Feral Cat spec provides useful utility such as leader of a pack, that provides everyone in the party with 5% extra crit. Moonkin is on the same playing field as an Elemental Shaman. They won't provide the best personal DPS, but provide very useful utility to make up for it, such as Moonkin form that provides the party with 5% spell crit and increased hit chance debuff for the melee, and also Insect Swarm that reduces the boss's chance to hit the tank. Resto is a strong healer for both raid and tank healing. They also have decent utility like Innovate and Combat Res, which all Druids in fact have. Resto really shines more in PvP as a.
The thing you would need to keep in mind, by the way, Dogfish, is that you are now talking about phase 1. Yeah, you say, I don't know, man, this video seems kind of off in some cases. The thing is, with mega nerfed content, SP Shadow Priest won't be as needed, and same goes with Innovate on Mages. They can almost handle themselves. In phase 1, yes. In Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, and Phase 5, the raid nerfs are not as bad. Like, even if we end up getting post-nerf content in later phases as well, the nerfs aren't as insane as the Phase 1 nerfs. But also, Blizzard has said in the most recent blue post they made about this, which is like over a month ago, by the way, this info came out, that they are keeping their options open and listening to feedback, and they are open to not nerfing future content as hard. Which is when you need to keep in mind, this is a TBC anniversary class picking guide. It's not TBC Phase 1 class picking guide, because what class you play in Phase 1, for most people, is the class you intend on playing the entire TBC. Which is why Shadow Priest will very likely be in demand for this Innervate effect as well, like Boomkins for Innervate, Resto Druids for Innervate, Shadow Priest for Mana Back, Mana Battery effect for both healers and arcane mages through the entire TBC anniversary. While in Phase 1 you might not need them as much, you might need them later, and many guilds are already planning around that.
Best healer for Arena, very great at applying versatile playstyles of their various talent builds and various shape-shifting forms to counter every other class in the game. Druid is always one of the most fun classes to play in WoW, and I would confidently say that you'll have fun playing every single spec, particularly as if you get bored of one you could just try another one out. The only exception might be Moonkin, since the rotation is very simple like in Mage's, but not quite as brain dead as a Warlock's rotation. But anyway guys, I promise I'll keep it.
The Boomkin rotation doesn't even matter. Oh, dude, you play a Boomkin, you go out of mana, nobody cares. You are just there for 2 reasons. Well, I guess 3. You are there for the dream state, you are there for your Boomkin aura, and you're there for Innervate. Like, yeah, you're not really there for much, man. As long as you bring in those things, they don't care. You can just slash a dance, do a Boomkin dance, and buff their spirits, you know? I don't know, you're there as a mascot, really.
It's short and sweet. My name is Goblin. Until my next video, ciao.
Alright, boys. Alright, there we go. That was a quick and easy class picking guide. I think this is better digestible than getting one of the 3-hour guides. And then here's the thing, if you watch a video like this and you get the info that you need, that is great. And if you feel like you want to dive deeper into it, many content creators out there either have a 15 to 20 minute guide, like class only videos, or they have a 3-hour video on choosing a class as well, right? So you watch a video like this, and if you're satisfied, then that's great. Now you have digested the whole thing. But if you still want to dive deeper, either into one class or all of them, there are other videos diving deeper into it. It's just, for me, I don't have the patience to sit down and watch a 3-hour video. I would much rather have anything between 10 minutes and 30 minutes. 40 minutes is kind of pushing it, but 10 and 30 is kind of perfect to me. But yeah, I like it. Good. Nice. I like to see that he's making content. I know that he's not a full-time content creator anymore, at least I think so. He's gotten like a career change now and a real-life job. But still, I like to see that he's keeping in touch with the game, and playing the game, and making videos.